This is the auto team for Hall of Trials Harsetti, and in my infinite wisdom, I forgot to at least take a picture of this screen before I put up my top 100 run, so you can't actually see where my score would end up in the rankings, but this is a picture of the final end screen. It's 21.5 million damage, and when I did this run, it said top 2%, or within the top 2%, so I would say this is definitely safe for the top 5%. As usual, I completely forgot to mention there's going to be an Unequip next week, going from Wednesday to Sunday, so it'd be a good idea to wait until then to do your run if you want to save some gold. For this rotation, we're going to need 2 or more fire heroes in the team. So just making sure that when you're building your team, you have 2 fire heroes. So let's go over all of the roles and any potential replacements. First up is the healer slot, Doris. Doris is kind of just the best one. She just heals a ton. Instead of Doris, you could also run something like Angelica, who also heals a bunch, or Rowana. Doris is pretty accessible though, so I'd highly recommend just using her. And then we've got our DPS slot, Tori. Tori is going to be the best in slot because, especially since we're autoing, it's really nice actually playing the Soulburn mechanic, the Soulburn S1 mechanic. Because with Soulburn S1, we guarantee that we have our big nuke to break the barrier and also to end the break phase. Tori has the biggest multiplier on S1 Soulburn for Thieves, so she's definitely going to be the best in slot. For alternatives, you'd be looking for units with good multipliers on their S1 Soulburns. No one really comes close to Tori, but I checked the first 2 phases barriers and those aren't too hard to break, not sure about the third one. MLK-Ron, Lightkarin, and Kisei all have decent multipliers on their S1s, so those should work fine. Another kind of troll option is Rylet. Rylet gets extra turn on his Soulburn, so he would S1 twice, which is definitely breaking the barrier. But then he immediately launches his S3 extra attack, and then gets another extra turn in S1s starting the break phase. It works out okay, but he does also end the break phase with just S1, which isn't too much damage. Lastly is the Stripper slot. So for the Strippers, you've got quite a few options. You're mainly looking for units that have some sort of either strip on their S1 or a really low cooldown on a strip, so that they could potentially cycle. Mages have the benefit of being able to hold EL of Violin, so that even if your tunings don't work out perfectly, you'd at worst have an 80% chance to strip. And if you take 2 turns, then it would be 2 80% chances to strip. So you've got quite a few options here. Sea Phantom Politis is going to be the best one. She's got 100% strip on her S1, just run her skills off and send it. There's also something like Flan, where with her EE, she's got a 75% chance to strip on her S1, and if you have her S1 molded for some strange reason, there'd be a 100% chance to strip. There's Arowell, who has 2 75% chances to strip on her S1, I think. Only downside with Arowell is that Harsetti's S1 targets the highest HP, so you probably want to make sure that Arowell is not your highest HP, or she's going to die. It's much better to have it be Doris instead, or have Doris be your highest HP rather. And then the fire option that I'm using to meet the 2 fire requirement is Carrot. Carrot is Mage, she can hold Yellow Violin. Flat Attack Imprint is also a nice bonus, but our S3 has a full strip on it as well, so if the timing lines up, you can have Carrot use her S3 to dispel the buff as well. Some other options that are fire is there's Adventurer Ross, 75% chance to strip on his S1. There is Zealot Carmine Rose, 3 turn cooldown on her S3, which has a strip and can also hold Violin. And there's also a Chaos Inquisitor who has I think it's like 260% chances to strip on his S1. So that is it for all of the options, and now let's take a look at their stats. Let's start off with Tori. So for Tori, it's just the usual full damage, destruction, crit chance sets. We're not going Torrent because we have so much damage percent already. Damage boost is pretty minor. And we're also using Cruel Mischief. If you don't have Cruel Mischief, you can go POS, and if you don't have that, any attack boosting artifact works fine, like Windrider maybe. If you are struggling to have your Tori take the turn fast enough, you can just up her speed a little bit. It's fine to drop a little bit of damage because we're not aiming for top 100, it's just top 5%. Next up is Doris. So for Doris, I've got her with 100% crit chance, so we can get a little bit more damage in the break phase from the target weakness stacks. And then aside from that, it's pretty much just some bulk and a bit of speed. And I'm using Touch of Rekos for extra sustain. And now for the strippers, let's start off with Politis. So Politis, I've got her at 266. I had to slow her down a little bit because she was taking too many turns in the barrier phase, which I'll explain a little bit later because it's pretty important for how different this auto is from last time. But aside from that, it's just a good amount of speed, not too fast, with 100% crit chance, and not even sure if I need this, but Bloodstone for extra sustain just in case. And then we've got Carrot, who I also had to slow down, but I've got her I kind of just auto-geared her, so she's on a DPS build. A bit of speed, 100% crit chance with Yellow Violin. So now let's talk about the thing. In this Harsetti fight, we are using Tori as our DPS, and she has one really big difference from Fenris. So when the barrier phase starts, you have 2 turns to get your turn and have your DPS break the barrier after the Sovereign's mana has been removed. So obviously, if your DPS doesn't take a turn after the Sovereign's mana has been removed, before Harsetti moves twice, then Harsetti's just going to use her S3, and your run is pretty much bricked. So the problem is that Fenris on his S2 had a 30% CR push, and I said you had 2 turns to take a turn in the barrier phase. After the first turn, Harsetti would always proc Fenris S2, and that meant that Fenris would push up 30% CR, which was always enough for him to take a turn and use his S3 to break the barrier. Now, we don't have the luxury of that CR push, which means that we need to be a little bit more careful with our speed tunings. Tori potentially can't be too slow if you're running your supports really fast. And your supports, regardless of Tori's speed, since you want Tori high damage, can't be too fast. That's why I had to slow down my Politis. She was like 290, I slowed her down to 260. And so I had to slow down Carrot. I had her like 230, slowed her down to like 210, 215. And that was just because they were taking so many turns and pushing Harsetti up that it was causing Tori to not be able to move. So you definitely want to make sure that you're avoiding that issue. But now, you can take a look at the run if you want.
어리석은 선택의 말로는 이토록 무섭다. 자, 특별히 구원하는 대책을 보여드리죠. 이제 아프지 않죠? 우스운 장난이고 상황을 보아하니 제가 이길 가능성이 높습니다. 자, 나도 뭐든지 할 수 있다고. 도움이 됐나요? 당신에 대한 분석은 모두 끝냈습니다. 그만 놓으시라고요. 재미있구나. 그 덧없는 빨간. 제 연구의 성과로 모두를 지켜낼 거예요. 상황을 보아하니 제가 이길 가능성이 높습니다. 제가 치유해드릴게요. 슬슬 사라져주겠네. 점. 자, 자. 그만 놓으시라고요.
쓸모를 다했으니 이제 잠들어도 좋.
이제 아프지 않죠? 자, 자. 상황을 보아하니 제가 이길 가능성이 높습니다.
애송이는 안 좋아해서.
물러서지 마세요. 맞설 힘을 드릴게요. 예쁘게 축하드릴게요. 당신에 대한 분석은 모두 끝냈습니다. 자, 도움이 됐나요? 자, 나도 뭐든지 할 수 있다고. 자, 상황을 보아하니 제가 이길 가능성이 높습니다. 꼭 예쁘게 축하드릴게요.
재미있구나. 그 덧없는 빨간.
So that's it for the auto run. It's definitely harder than it was last time, just because last time you kind of just toss stuff in, and because of Fenris S2, it would just click into place. This time you do need to be a little bit more careful about your speeds, but it's still not that bad, not that hard to fix. It's good that the auto is here again. That's the nice thing about this Harsetti fight being more or less the same, is that we definitely know the auto still works and it wasn't too hard to figure out. But I'll see you guys next time.